Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage one of the Vuelta a España. Now, today's race, it's going to be a nervous one for the riders. Throughout my career, whenever I'm doing the team time trial events, and I did it in 2013 when I won the Vuelta, was the first stage, just like today in 2022. There's always a lot of nerves in the bus. For me, I was sitting at the back of the bus in 2013, and we had another race coming up, Tour of China, that you had to have all your passport paperwork in, and I hadn't had that done, and it wasn't filled out right. But my number one objective in 2013, after sitting out 5 months with a knee problem, coming back here at the Vuelta for this team time trial event, my main objective was to stay with Fabian Cancellara and finish with the front group so I can battle for the general classification. Now, that year, I told you, it was Tour of China that was coming up about a month and a half after that. In the back of the bus, one of the directors, Acevedo, he's back there arguing with me about not having all my paperwork in line for the Tour of China starting up and starting soon. I looked up at him sitting on the couch at the back of the bus and said, Acevedo, I don't care. I'm getting ready to start a Grand Tour in 20 minutes, man. I don't care what happens at Tour of China. Leave me alone. He leaves me alone. We get ready and all set up. And it's total chaos outside of the bus. When you look at the pictures and you're walking around the pits, that's what you'll see. All the riders lined up. That means all the staff out front, they're all losing their hair too because they're running around trying to help every rider. And let me tell you, when you haven't trained day in and day out on your TT bike, there's always something a rider has to adjust. Whether if he's got to change the air pressure, adjust the bar, or just get his power meter set on straight, there's always some chaos happening. So the nerves are very high on this stage one Vuelta a España, I can assure you. Now, when the racing takes off, it's really Bike Exchange that's out there that's setting the blistering pace. And Bike Exchange had a little bit of problems in one of the left turns. It was slippery coming from dry to wet. You'll see two of the riders as they go into the left there. Front rider's got to go wide, and he's taking the second place rider wide with him. We'll see right after they start coming out of that turn, that second place rider, he's got to get back underneath the back wheel of the rider in front, and he's got to accelerate if he wants to get up there and start helping his teammates. Bike Exchange will do a solid time, and they'll come through 7 seconds faster than the FDJ riders that held the lead before Bike Exchange. With Bike Exchange sitting in the hot seat, we know the first half of this race is over. Now we're going to start getting into the heavy hitters because leaving the ramp, UAE Team Emirates and Bora Hansgrohe. Bora Hansgrohe were setting a blistering pace at the first time check, but when they crossed the line, they're 9 seconds off of Bike Exchange. Now UAE Team Emirates coming into the final. It's Brandon McNulty on the front of the team, and he's driving it hard all the way to the line to come in for a second place time, 2 seconds behind the time of Bike Exchange. Now we start getting into the big hitters because it's the final teams getting ready to leave the ramp. Ineos is taking off. Movistar's following behind him, and then it's Quick Step with Remco Evenepoel, one of my big favorites here to win the general classification. Still behind Bike Exchange, though, you got Jumbo-Visma. And when we look back before they're up on the ramp, it's Primož Roglič. He's the last one to leave the trainer, so he's getting in maximum warmth before he has to get up there and line up with his 8-man teams up on the ramp as they drop down to start for the final team here to leave the ramp at the stage one of the Vuelta a España. Now up front, we start seeing Ineos. They're well oiled. These guys are drilling hard. You see them all the time as we go through the technical parts of the course. Right away, it starts narrow. Then there's lefts, rights, little chicanes that all the riders got to get through. And just about all the teams had to deal with some drama in terms of the roads being wet in some place and dry in others. Now Ineos is not playing around. They're up there driving full gas 100%, looking fantastic with all of their teams staying together. They'll cross the line with 7 guys, 18 seconds faster than Bike Exchange, but we still got Movistar out on the course. It's Alejandro Valverde, and in his interview before the race, he said he just wants to get through the race healthy and solid. Now, he's 42 years of age, and the commentators told us up while sitting on the couch that Valverde could be the oldest rider ever to finish the Vuelta a España. Up until this year, I was the guy that had the oldest record, and up until this year, if Valverde can't win a stage or he can't win the general classification, I am the oldest Grand Tour winner in the galaxy. So Movistar's out there, they're doing a solid time, but when they cross the line, they're still 30 seconds back down to the time of Ineos. Now we got Quick Step out on the road still, followed by Jumbo-Visma. Quick Step, they're going fast. When they left the ramp, it was Remco Evenepoel, and on his wheel, Julian Alaphilippe, just as had they predicted in their earlier interviews before the Vuelta started. Now, I told you beyond the coverage, I wanted to know who the next guy was, and the next guy is going to be Van Wilder. Van Wilder's got a solid spot there, sitting right behind Julian Alaphilippe, who's on the wheel of Remco Evenepoel. Now, when we start getting that to the very finish, that's when things start getting a little bit crazy because they start losing riders off the back with Vervaeke. He's first to drop off. And then up front, we see Julian Alaphilippe when he's coming off his pull. He's trying to slot back in. He slots behind Peter Siri, but then he can't hold the wheel, and he's got a motion there for Fausto Masnada, the pull in front of him. Definitely hurting him, but we're just about a 1.5K, 2K to go. At this point in time, Remco Evenepoel starts taking his pulls with about 600 meters to go, and that's when we see some big-time suffering in the Quick Step train back there as riders are starting to fall off with Remco Evenepoel pulling. He's pulling all the way up to about 200 meters, 175 meters to go, and then on his wheel, Peter Siri looks back over his shoulder to the left. He knows he can't hold the wheel any longer, Remco Evenepoel, because the Belgium kid is driving it into the finish line, trying to take the lead and the hot seat away from Ineos. With Remco Evenepoel's final acceleration, Peter Siri pulls out of line. It's Fausto Masnada that has to close the gap, and they're trying to come up to the Belgian rider. They'll close up on his wheel just as he crosses the line. But Quick Step are behind 1 second off Team Ineos. So Team Ineos sitting in the hot seat. They only got one more team out there, but it's Jumbo-Visma. Now when Jumbo-Visma left the ramp earlier in their race, it was Sepp Kuss back there, the American kid. He wasn't taking any pulls, sitting dead last throughout most of the first part of this race. I didn't see Sepp Kuss pull at all. Up front, though, the 7 riders in front, they look well drilled, and all these guys are going fast. When they went through the first time check, they were up by 14 seconds on Ineos' time. So we know when we come into the finish here, there's going to be some drama between Team Ineos and between Jumbo-Visma if they can hold their race lead from the first time check. And then the powerful team, Jumbo-Visma, still drilling to the line. Doesn't look like they're losing any time, and Sepp Kuss is pulling through, but they got 2 other riders sitting on. It's Sam Oomen and Robert Gesink that's sitting on. You'll see Mike Teunissen. He'll come back as the team starts going into the right turn. Mike Teunissen doesn't hesitate. He slots right in. Third wheel behind on the back of the train there because he knows the 2 riders behind him they're not taking a pull at this point in time. Now up front, as we see the Jumbo-Visma train, they're still working hard because they got Rowan Dennis. And let me remind you guys, he just got done winning the Commonwealth Individual Time Trial just about 2 weeks ago. Now we know he's on form because he's driving still, not missing a turn up front, and he's taking big pulls. As we start coming into the final, Robert Gesink comes up and he starts passing up on the left side there of Rowan Dennis. Rowan Dennis must have some good form because he can feel there's something happening on the left side. You'll see him look over to the left. He knows it's Gesink, and he pulls out of the rotation, allows Gesink to slot in their third, fourth wheel from the front of the Jumbo-Visma train. Now at this point in time, when I saw this, I was like, they got a little bit of something happening here. Must plan on be giving the stage victory to Robert Gesink as Hessing comes up. When they get closer to the line, you'll see the Jumbo-Visma guys all look over to the right side there, and Robert Gesink will come through and do the final pulls through the chicane end of the line as Jumbo-Visma will win stage 1, 13 seconds up on Team Ineos. Now, at the finish of today's stage, we know a lot of things by today's team time trial event. We know that Primoz Roglic is on form because I never seen him miss a pull. So whatever form he lost at the Tour de France from crashing, it looks like he's still got some solid form left to start here on stage 1 of the Vuelta a España because he finished second right on Hessing's wheel. Now, Jumbo-Visma finished with all 8 riders of their team. And I got to tell you, I was impressed with the tactics from Jumbo-Visma because when we're talking about Sepp Kuss sitting on the first technical sections and trying to do pulls with the big guys on their team like Mike Teunissen and Eduardo Affini, it's hard when you're a guy the size of Sepp Kuss and not a time trial specialist to be able to pull and stay on the train. I think this is the way you race team time trials. You either sit the guy on the back the whole time and hope that he can pull through later, which is the tactic that Sepp Kuss employed on today's stage, so he was able to help out their team. But remember, even if you have a rider that's not taking a pull on the back, you have the benefit that if there's a problem with one of the riders, you got one guy back there that's been sitting on, and maybe he can do one big pull to try to get a rider back on if there's any difficulties from some kind of incident of riders coming off. I'll give you for one example on today's team time trial event, it was Team Ineos that were going into the left turn hard, and we'll see the motorcycle camera that's blocking off one of the riders there, making them go wide around the outside. So if that should happen, you always have one rider like Sepp Kuss, who's not racing for general classification, so he always has the ability to drop back, grab a rider, do one massive pull for him, and hopefully that'll get one of their GC favorite riders back on if it's necessary. Now, of course, with Sepp Kuss, he was able to pull later, so we know there's an advantage to keeping you one rider longer with your team. Now, when we start looking at the general classification and how the shakeout was at the end here at stage 1, you know Ineos are in a fine spot because they only lost 13 seconds to Primoz Roglic. That means Teo Gegenhardt, Carlos Rodriguez, and Richard Carapaz are all solid up on the general classification. Quick Step's Remco Evenepoel, they only lost 1 second to Team Ineos. That means they're only 14 seconds behind Primoz Roglic on the general classification. In my book right now, if I'm Remco Evenepoel and I'm the directors, I'm thinking this was an absolute solid day of riding for Remco Evenepoel just to be 14 seconds down on Jumbo-Visma, because now the tactics throughout this first week of racing, especially stage 2 and stage 3 up in this dangerous area, your team doesn't have the responsibility to work. You can put your whole team around Remco Evenepoel. And later when we get down to Spain, the first tactics I'm telling Remco Evenepoel to employ is, first off, you don't do any crazy solo stuff from 178 kilometers out like we saw at the World Championships last year. You don't go from 30K out, and you follow Primoz Roglic around all day long on these first mountain stages to see what kind of fitness the Slovenian rider has. Now, other riders on the general classification who lost big time, it's got to be Ben O'Connor from AG2R. They lost about 55 seconds to Primoz Roglic, so that's a lot of time for Ben O'Connor to make up the Australian rider. And then the big losers here got to be EF Education, right? They have Hugh Carthy and Rigoberto Urán on their team for the general classification, and they lost almost 1 minute and 20 seconds at the end of today's stage 1 Vuelta a España. Primoz Roglic is on fine form, it looks like. So we got a big battle amongst all the GC favorites. Was a spectacular day for the team time trial event here on stage 1 of the Vuelta a España. Hope you guys enjoyed today's racing. The big action and all the fireworks will start soon. And if we get any crosswinds tomorrow up in the Netherlands, we know stage 2 and stage 3 is going to be probably two of the most exciting stages at this first week of the Vuelta a España until we start seeing Remco Evenepoel and Primoz Roglic battling it out mano a mano here later in the mountain stages of the Vuelta a España. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next edition of the Butterfly Effect.